Rhea Perlman's story begins not under the glimmering lights of Hollywood, but in the gritty, sun-faded streets of Coney Island, Brooklyn. Born March 31, 1948, into a family of Polish-Jewish immigrants, she entered a world that was still scarred by the recent horrors of World War II. Her parents, Philip and Adele, carried with them the weight of survival, the quiet determination of those who had seen too much and wanted more for the next generation. Her father ran a doll parts factory, managing both its operations and the small family household, while her mother worked as a bookkeeper. Life was far from easy, but it was full of purpose, structure, and lessons Rhea would carry with her for the rest of her life. Growing up in Bensonhurst during the 1950s meant learning quickly. The neighborhood was a mosaic of cultures, primarily Italian-American, with Jewish families like hers slowly staking their place in the community. It was a world where sharp tongues and sharper wits determined survival, and from an early age, Rhea learned that resilience wasn't optional, it was essential. As the older of two sisters, she was expected to help at home, to stand firm in the face of adversity, and to hold her ground when others tried to knock her down. The lessons she learned there, persistence, quick thinking, humor as armor, would later become her defining traits as an actress. Rhea's first introduction to performance was unconventional, raw, and deeply rooted in her heritage. Her family often took her to see Yiddish theater, one of the last golden eras before television would dominate entertainment. These small, intimate stages were filled with passion, with humor that could cut as sharply as it could heal, and with characters who were as complicated as the world outside. For young Rhea, this was more than entertainment. It was a revelation. She began to understand the power of storytelling, the way humor could reflect resilience, and the way identity could be both celebrated and challenged through performance. Every laugh, every gasp, every tension-filled moment on those tiny Brooklyn stages became a seed, planting the beginnings of a career that would one day span decades. NBUT growing up Jewish in 1950s. Brooklyn was not without hardship. Even in neighborhoods brimming with immigrants trying to build better lives, anti-Semitism lingered like an uninvited shadow. Rhea faced teasing, bullying, and subtle rejections that left invisible scars, yet she refused to let them define her. Instead, she transformed these early wounds into tools, sarcasm as armor, quick wit as a weapon, toughness as a shield. That strength didn't just protect her, it became her signature, the edge that would later make her unforgettable on screen. NBY, the time she reached school age, her talent was already emerging. Small school plays became her proving ground, and by age 10, she was delivering lines with timing and nuance that suggested something extraordinary was taking shape. Unlike many children performing in limited arts programs, Rhea's comedy and timing were instinctual, raw, and real. Teachers began to notice, peers began to laugh, and Rhea began to feel the intoxicating pull of the stage, a pull that no audition, no rejection, and no societal expectation could ever break. As the 1960s unfolded, America was a country in turmoil. Civil rights marches, anti-war protests, and generational shifts reshaped cities, classrooms, and young minds alike. It was in this chaos that Rhea Perlman enrolled at Hunter College in Manhattan, pursuing a degree in drama. Here, in the heart of New York City, she immersed herself in the experimental, the bold, and the politically charged world of performance art. College wasn't just about learning lines. It was about learning to speak truths through characters, to channel grit, anger, humor, and sorrow into roles that demanded authenticity. The foundation was laid for a career built not on glamour, but on realism. And after graduation in 1968, Rhea took her first tentative steps into the professional world. Off-Broadway productions were her training grounds, and it was there she crossed paths with a young Danny DeVito, who would become both her partner in life and on screen. Their early collaborations weren't glamorous. They were raw, intimate, and demanding. The stages were small, the audiences discerning, and the stakes high. Yet through these early years, Rhea's talent, timing, and tenacity began to shine, setting the stage for a career that would one day redefine television comedy. By the early 1970s, Rhea had begun to make small but meaningful inroads into film. A minor role in the student movie Hot Dogs for Gone might have seemed insignificant at the time, but it marked her first appearance on camera and solidified a creative partnership with DeVito. These early experiences, from the Yiddish theaters of Brooklyn to the experimental stages of Manhattan, were shaping not just an actress, but a force of nature. She was learning how to transform real-life toughness into relatable, memorable characters, how to make people laugh while also making them feel. NTHE seeds of her breakthrough were planted quietly, steadily, and almost imperceptibly. While the world saw only glimpses of her talent, those who worked with Rhea knew something special was brewing. Her grit, her humor, her refusal to conform to expectations. These traits weren't just survival mechanisms. They were the tools that would one day propel her onto a stage that millions would watch, laugh with, and remember forever. By the late 1970s, Rhea Perlman was no longer just a promising talent emerging from Brooklyn streets. She was a determined actress carving her path through the labyrinth of New York's theater and film scene. Her early collaborations with Danny DeVito, who had by then begun gaining recognition for his unorthodox charm and unrelenting energy, had solidified a partnership that was as creative as it was romantic. They were young, ambitious, and willing to endure the grueling grind of auditions, off-Broadway productions, and small film roles that demanded long hours and offered little reward. And it was during these formative years that Perlman honed the very qualities that would later define her iconic performances: precision and comedic timing, fearless emotional honesty, and an uncanny ability to transform ordinary dialogue into unforgettable moments. She was relentless, moving from one audition to another, often living in cramped Manhattan apartments, juggling part-time jobs to pay the rent, and immersing herself in roles that demanded a fearless vulnerability. Every failure, every near miss, only strengthened her resolve. It was a struggle familiar to many aspiring actors, but Perlman approached it differently, with humor as a shield and authenticity as her weapon. NHER break came quietly but decisively. In 1982, she auditioned for what would become her most defining role, Carla Tortelli on Cheers. At the time, the show was a gamble, a sitcom set in a Boston bar with a ragtag ensemble cast. But Perlman's audition was electric. She brought Carla to life with a razor-sharp wit, a streetwise toughness, and a palpable sense of realism that instantly distinguished her from other candidates. Producers and casting directors recognized something rare. Perlman didn't just play Carla, she was Carla, a character whose sarcasm was as cutting as it was charming, whose heart occasionally peeked through her hard exterior and whose presence could dominate every scene without overwhelming it. When Cheers premiered, it wasn't an immediate sensation. Critics were cautiously optimistic, audiences were tentative, and ratings were modest. But Perlman's performance quickly became a highlight, a lifeline that drew viewers back week after week. Her portrayal of Carla, a waitress juggling 6 children, a turbulent love life, and the chaos of a bustling bar, resonated because it was real, messy, and unapologetically human. In a television landscape often dominated by polished sitcom stars, Perlman's authenticity was a revelation. She didn't need to be glamorous. She needed to be believable, and she was. One of the most remarkable aspects of Perlman's tenure on Cheers was her consistency. She appeared in all 273 episodes, a feat rarely achieved in television history. During those years, she navigated the challenges of being a working mother in front of the camera, even integrating her real-life pregnancies into the storyline. Rather than hiding her personal experiences, Perlman used them to deepen her character, blending comedy with truth in a way that became her signature. Audiences didn't just watch Carla, they felt her struggles, laughed at her sarcasm, and rooted for her resilience. Behind the scenes, Perlman became known for her professionalism and loyalty. She resisted offers to star in spin-offs or chase solo projects, preferring instead to remain with the ensemble cast she considered family. This decision wasn't purely professional. It reflected a personal ethos rooted in her upbringing: loyalty, consistency, and commitment to those she cared about. Her dedication created a tight-knit atmosphere on set, fostering genuine friendships with fellow actors, including Ted Danson, George Wendt, and her own sister and father, who occasionally appeared on the show. These relationships, both professional and personal, became an anchor for Perlman, grounding her amidst the whirlwind of fame and industry pressure. And as the 1980s progressed, Perlman's influence extended beyond television. Hollywood began to take notice of her versatility. She embraced film roles that required drastic transformations, challenging her physicality and range as an actress. One of the most memorable examples was her role as Mrs. Wormwood in Matilda, where she underwent extensive makeup and physical changes to inhabit a character that was as grotesque as she was comedic. Perlman's ability to fully commit to such roles, regardless of vanity or convention, showcased a fearless approach to performance, a willingness to dive into the bizarre, the humorous, and the uncomfortable to create something unforgettable. Her work in animation further cemented her legacy. Lending her voice to projects like Sing, she bridged generations of audiences, demonstrating that her talents weren't confined to live action. Voice acting demanded a different kind of discipline, one that relied entirely on timing, tone, and emotional inflection. Perlman excelled, proving that her comedic instincts and emotional depth could resonate even without physical presence. Yet, even amidst professional triumph, Perlman's personal life was a tapestry of complexity. Her relationship with Danny DeVito, which had begun decades earlier, evolved into a private, enduring bond. They married in 1982 after more than a decade together, a ceremony as intimate as it was understated. Despite occasional separations, their commitment to each other and to their 3 children remained unshakable. Perlman's choices reflected her dual priorities, a thriving career and a stable, loving family. She navigated fame without sacrificing the values instilled in her by her Brooklyn upbringing, balancing public acclaim with private devotion. NTHE Rise of Cheers marked more than a career milestone. It was a cultural moment. Carla Tortelli became an icon of resilience, humor, and unapologetic individuality. Perlman's ability to merge authenticity with comedy elevated the show, turning it from a standard sitcom into a beloved institution. Yet behind the laughter and the applause, she remained profoundly human. She experienced the same anxieties, heartbreaks, and challenges as the millions who watched her weekly. In doing so, she forged a connection with audiences that went beyond performance. It was personal, enduring, and deeply emotional. Through these years, Perlman's trajectory was defined by contrasts: toughness and vulnerability, comedy and depth, public acclaim and private restraint. She wasn't merely a star, she was a storyteller, a performer whose life informed her work in ways that made every role feel lived in and real. The world of Hollywood, with its glamour and superficiality, often failed to contain her spirit. Yet she navigated it with an authenticity that would come to define her legacy, paving the way for decades of unforgettable performances to follow. While Rhea Perlman dazzled audiences on screen, the life she led behind the cameras was a delicate balance of love, loyalty, and unexpected heartbreak. Fame, as many stars discover, is a double-edged sword. It grants recognition, adoration, and opportunity, yet it magnifies every personal struggle and exposes even the most private moments to public scrutiny. For Perlman, the challenges of her personal life were as intense and dramatic as any script she ever performed. NHER relationship with Danny DeVito had always been unconventional, yet enduring. Meeting in 1971, they were drawn together instantly, 2 young artists navigating the chaos of New York's theater scene. Within weeks, they were living together, sharing a small apartment filled with energy, creativity, and ambition. 11 years later, they married in a private ceremony, a decision rooted not in public expectation, but in personal commitment. While Hollywood often thrives on sensational breakups and turbulent affairs, Perlman and DeVito remained steadfast in their devotion, choosing stability for the sake of their 3 children over public spectacle. Yet even within this enduring bond, life was far from idyllic. The couple experienced separations, temporary fractures in their relationship that tested their resilience and patience. These pauses were not indicative of failure, but rather of the complexities inherent in blending 2 powerful personalities under the pressure of fame. Perlman, fiercely independent and emotionally transparent, often struggled to reconcile her identity as an artist with the expectations of marriage and motherhood. DeVito, equally committed to his craft, faced his own pressures. Yet, remarkably, neither divorce nor permanent estrangement ever defined their story. They remained united in principle and in purpose, prioritizing their children's well-being and family continuity above personal grievances. NTHE heartache didn't stop with marital complexities. Perlman faced profound challenges in her role as a mother, particularly in supporting her son Elijah Blue. His battles with addiction cast a long shadow over the family, moments of fear and uncertainty punctuating an otherwise successful life. Perlman, who had learned resilience in the gritty streets of Brooklyn, approached her son's struggles with a mix of fierce protectiveness and unwavering love. She understood the fragility of life, the suddenness with which joy could turn into despair, and yet she faced these trials with dignity and discretion. Her willingness to endure pain privately, without sensationalizing it for the media, underscored a maturity and empathy that often went unnoticed by the public but defined her character in the most profound way. Professionally, Perlman continued to thrive, yet life's unexpected losses reminded her of the fragile balance between career and personal stability. The sudden death of George Wendt in 2025, her co-star and longtime friend, was a shock that reverberated through her life. Wendt had been more than a colleague. He was a companion in the shared triumphs and struggles of nearly 3 decades on Cheers. His absence was a stark reminder that even the strongest bonds could be severed by fate, and that every performance, every moment on set was precious. Perlman, who had always infused her characters with lived experience, drew on grief and loss to deepen her art, turning personal tragedy into subtle layers of authenticity that resonated with audiences. Amid the heartbreak, Perlman also navigated the quiet victories that punctuated her later years. Roles in films like Barbie in 2023, where she portrayed Ruth Handler with understated gravitas, allowed her to demonstrate her versatility, moving effortlessly between comedy, drama, and nuance. She embraced these roles not merely for the work itself, but as opportunities to challenge herself, to reinvent her craft, and to remind the world that her talent was timeless. In every performance, she balanced humor and gravitas, a delicate alchemy that had become her hallmark. And even as the public celebrated her professional achievements, Perlman remained acutely aware of the passage of time. Aging in Hollywood is often treated as a liability, a period when actresses are sidelined or typecast. Perlman defied these conventions. She continued to act well into her 70s, appearing in television projects such as Poker Face and Netflix's Too Much, demonstrating that passion, skill, and dedication are never bound by age. Her presence on screen was a testament to perseverance, a living example that talent, when paired with resilience, endures beyond trends, industry whims, and societal expectations. The tension between public success and private struggle created a unique complexity in Perlman's life. She was admired for her humor, lauded for her professional consistency, and respected for her loyalty to family and craft. Yet beneath the laughter and accolades lay the quiet burden she carried alone, the pain of watching a child struggle, the sorrow of losing a friend, the challenges of maintaining a marriage under the glare of fame. These realities did not define her publicly, but they shaped her privately, infusing her performances with a depth and authenticity that few actors could replicate. Through it all, Perlman's resilience remained unshakable. She confronted adversity with humor, with courage, and with an unwavering commitment to authenticity. Her story illustrates a truth that resonates far beyond Hollywood. Life is rarely simple, and success is never free from sacrifice. But those who navigate its complexities with grace, empathy, and determination leave a legacy far richer than accolades or recognition. Perlman's legacy is not only in the laughter she provoked or the awards she received, but in the emotional truth she brought to every role, the love she sustained in her family, and the quiet heroism of a life lived fully and honestly. In a career spanning decades, Rhea Perlman never allowed personal struggles to define her publicly, yet they informed the richness of her work in ways that were subtle but profound. From Brooklyn stages to Hollywood sets, from the chaos of family life to the rigor of Emmy-winning performances, she demonstrated that talent is inseparable from experience. Her laughter, sharp wit, and enduring presence were not just entertainment. They were testimony to a life forged through challenge, perseverance, and unwavering humanity. Through heartbreak and triumph alike, Rhea Perlman remained steadfast, a woman whose professional brilliance was inseparable from her personal depth, and whose life continues to inspire those who watch, listen, and remember. As Rhea Perlman approached her later years in Hollywood, the true measure of her career became increasingly clear. Beyond awards, iconic roles, or box office success, her legacy was defined by her ability to reinvent herself, to remain relevant across decades, and to inspire both colleagues and audiences alike. In an industry notorious for fleeting fame, Perlman's longevity was nothing short of extraordinary, a testament not only to her talent but to a tenacity forged in the streets of Brooklyn, honed in theaters, and polished under the unforgiving glare of prime-time television. Perlman's reinvention was neither calculated nor opportunistic. It was organic, rooted in a deep understanding of character, narrative, and audience connection. From the biting sarcasm of Carla Tortelli on Cheers to the maternal yet formidable presence of Mrs. Wormwood in Matilda, Perlman consistently explored new facets of performance. Each role required transformation, physically, emotionally, and psychologically. For Matilda, she underwent extensive physical modifications to embody the character's exaggerated traits, fully committing to a performance that was both grotesque and comically perfect. In Barbie, 2023, she offered a contrasting subtlety, portraying Ruth Handler with a quiet, understated strength that resonated far beyond mere caricature. These roles illustrated her range, proving that Perlman was not bound by typecasting or the expectations of her audience. She was an artist in continuous evolution. NHER's ability to adapt extended beyond film and television into the realm of voice acting, an arena where her work bridged generations. Projects such as Sing allowed her voice to become a vessel for storytelling, connecting with children and adults alike. The craft of voice acting demanded a different set of skills: nuance, timing, and emotive power without visual presence, and Perlman excelled in this arena as she had on screen. It was a reminder that true artistry lies not merely in being seen, but in being felt. Across mediums, she remained a constant, authentic, compelling, and deeply human. Yet Perlman's reinvention was inseparable from her identity, a balance she navigated with remarkable precision. While Hollywood often pressures women to shed their past selves to remain marketable, Perlman embraced her history. Her upbringing in Brooklyn's working-class neighborhoods informed not just her humor, but her perspective on life, relationships, and creativity. The grit, resilience, and emotional honesty of her early years became the foundation upon which every character was built. Even in roles that required flamboyance or exaggeration, there was always an underlying humanity that made her performances relatable, engaging, and enduring. This connection between personal truth and professional craft also informed her choices behind the scenes. Perlman was famously loyal to her colleagues, exemplified by her commitment to Cheers. Despite offers for spin-offs or new projects that might have elevated her profile further, she chose to honor the ensemble, the friendships, and the family-like bonds she had formed over 273 episodes. This loyalty extended to her family life, where she prioritized her children and grandchildren with a dedication that mirrored her professional consistency. In Perlman's world, success was never an individual pursuit. It was a tapestry woven from relationships, experiences, and shared moments both on and off screen. NHER's story is particularly instructive when viewed against the backdrop of Hollywood's shifting landscape. The entertainment industry is unforgiving, especially for women, often discarding talent as it ages or as trends change. Perlman defied these norms, working well into her 70s and continually securing meaningful roles. By choosing projects that challenged her, supported diverse narratives, and reflected contemporary storytelling, she ensured that her career was not only long but continually relevant. She became a model for reinvention, demonstrating that longevity in Hollywood is not about clinging to past glory, but embracing growth, change, and creative risk. And even as accolades and critical acclaim accumulated, Perlman remained grounded in her personal philosophy. Success, she understood, was inseparable from authenticity. Her public persona, the sharp wit, the unmistakable voice, the enduring humor, was inseparable from the person she was in private. A mother navigating complex family dynamics, a daughter honoring her immigrant roots, a woman weathering heartbreaks and celebrating triumphs. This equilibrium between personal authenticity and professional excellence made her story resonate deeply with audiences. Fans did not simply watch Perlman perform. They saw glimpses of life's complexities reflected in her work, and they connected with the emotional truth she carried into every role. Her enduring spirit is perhaps best encapsulated in her recent projects. In television appearances, voice work, and films, she continued to push boundaries, never relying solely on past success or iconic roles. She was fully present in each project, offering not just a performance, but an experience shaped by decades of observation, struggle, and emotional intelligence. Every laugh she elicited, every dramatic pause, every nuanced delivery was informed by a lifetime of lessons learned on stage, on set, and in life. Perlman's legacy, therefore, is not simply a collection of roles, but a masterclass in resilience, adaptability, and human connection. And ultimately, Rhea Perlman's story is one of perseverance in the face of adversity, of reinvention without compromise, and of authenticity in a world that often rewards the superficial. She embodies the truth that success is not merely the accumulation of accolades, but the ability to remain true to oneself while navigating life's unpredictable terrain. Her influence reaches beyond screens and stages. It resides in the artists she inspires, the audiences she touches, and the generations who will continue to celebrate her work for decades to come. And Perlman's life and career remind us that fame is transient, but character endures. The sharp, witty, compassionate, and resilient woman who emerged from the streets of Brooklyn has left an indelible mark on the world, a legacy of laughter, depth, and humanity that will endure long after the final credits roll. Rhea Perlman's journey is a testament to the power of authenticity and perseverance. From the bustling streets of Coney Island to the dazzling lights of Hollywood, she carved a path defined not by fleeting fame, but by dedication, heart, and an unwavering commitment to her craft. Each character she brought to life, from the fiery Carla Tortelli to the unforgettable Mrs. Wormwood, and even the voices that bridged generations, carried fragments of her own story, her humor, her resilience, and her humanity. Her personal life, entwined with triumphs and heartbreaks alike, shaped her performances with depth and honesty. The love she shared with Danny DeVito, the challenges of parenthood, the grief of loss, and the joy of family all became invisible threads weaving through her artistry. Even as the world changed, Perlman adapted without losing herself, proving that true strength lies in staying grounded while embracing growth. And Rhea Perlman's legacy is more than accolades or iconic roles. It is the laughter she inspired, the emotions she evoked, and the authenticity she carried through every stage of her life. She reminds us that resilience, heart, and courage are timeless, and that a life lived fully with both humor and grace leaves a mark that endures forever.